I'm actually probably less in favor of an unrealized capital gains tax than you are. The Tom guy keeps talking about how it's going to increase consumption so much that it's somehow gonna have like major inflationary effects. I'm not aware of any studies on that at all, or like anyone.
Yeah, well, his argument that he made here is really dumb because he's
particularly increasing taxes on investment income, like capital gains taxes, like taxing gifts as capital gains, taxing estates for capital gains and estate tax, eliminating 1031 exchanges, which are the like kind exchanges on real estate, so you don't have to pay tax when you sell real estate.
I'm just not. Thing is, you'd have to convince me that raising the tax on capital income by not like a significant, not even like an unprecedented amount. Like, that's so bad as to outweigh ending the independence of the Federal Reserve, 10% universal tariffs, and the increased deficit spending from not raising them, right? Because if we don't raise the taxes, the deficit goes up. At least if we don't cut spending, which I don't think Trump has a very solid plan to cut spending.
I'm concerned that you get the child tax credits. Or earned income credits, or these other
and they disincentivize
Harris proposals become entitlements. Because once you give them, it's really hard to take them away. Now, you can give them during COVID and take them away and say, oh, that was
universal child allowance based, more based. We are very close to hitting 1,000 subscribers. So subscribing right now will help out a lot. Trump versus Harris's tax plan. Which is best for the economy? Destiny versus... I don't really know who this guy is, but I feel like this is the area Destiny's going to be least confident in. I did watch one part of this where he did not understand what a value-added tax is, but...
Make more than $400,000 in net profit? Or, what do you believe, what tax rate should that be? Because, I guess that I would just love to hear your thoughts around taxation when it comes to...
Okay, so when he said debate starts at that, he was lying.
I guess here's maybe a different question. It's less specific. Are you in favor of lower taxes for pass-through businesses, even that make more than $400,000 in net profit? Or, what do you believe, what tax rate should that be? Because, I guess that I would just love to hear your thoughts around taxation when it comes to, people in business.
Business income.
Sure. I mean, on the most macro level, I think that the tax rate for society should be such that you can ideally afford the majority of your budget every year, right? So we've got some level of programs that we want to fund, and we fund that through taxation. Whether that taxation comes more from businesses versus individuals, to be 100% honest, I don't think I've ever been sold on the concept of a corporate tax. I don't know if it's something that is more productive than just taxing income, just period.
Sure,
I'm not entirely sure on.
Does he? I don't think he knows what a destination-based cash flow tax is, but he should be in support of that.
But I don't know enough. I don't know what the Laffer curve theoretical appointment should be for the corporate tax rate to optimize your cash flows from tax receipts from corporations. I'm just not sure. And I know you've got huge corporations that are very investment heavy and growing a ton. They just end up paying no corporate tax anyways because all their money goes back into reinvestment. So there are no profits to tax. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have strong opinions one way or the other about corporate taxes.
Corporate tax can actually end up taxing investment, which is one of the bad things about it, and why a destination-based cash flow tax, which it allows for the immediate expensing of all investment, is a good thing.
Work really believe that a lot of these tax breaks are helping small businesses. I just don't believe it that much. I feel like people just want to take on more money because at the end of the day, I've never hired or fired or thought about any part of my business because of the tax rates. If anything, higher taxes seem to spur on that investment a little bit more because I know that if I reinvest it's just revenue and then I can expense it out instead of paying taxes on it. But there might be some types of businesses I don't hold inventory, I don't sell products like that. There might be paperwork that I can see where it's I can see how this tax break would help significantly here. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what programs do you want to fund and then what's the best way to raise the money for it. Yeah.
But what's your opinion? Because is it a bad thing that people get wealthy in America?
Is it a bad? No, I don't think so at all. No, I think America is amazing for that.
So can I ask you a question, Destiny? So I have two questions. First of all, are you familiar with the global minimum tax that they proposed in the OECD?
Yeah, I think, GM, the idea, I'm familiar conceptually very high level with it, but
I'm not familiar with that even. I don't know what that is.
I think that
the idea of it is that
some global tax rate around the world, so there's not these tax haven incentives like an
Well,
Irish.
it actually would operate to make sure that American companies don't get all of those tax benefits and pay a minimum 15% tax rate. Okay, so they would pay tax, and it actually go into, I honestly can't even tell you where it goes, because, but it goes to other countries. It doesn't go to the U.S., okay? They would pay this minimum tax rate, so they would not effectively get all of those tax benefits, including all of the write-offs of their equipment. So I was just curious if you had any thoughts on that.
I think I don't like the idea of countries making a lot of money off of tax rates. So I'm not necessarily...
By the way, you know what we're solved this too? A destination-based tax. The taxes goes based on the destination rather than origin.
So some kind of global
origin tax allows for a lot more shady business practices when it comes to we're actually, even though we make all our products in America and sell all our products in America, we're actually based in Ireland, which has a really low tax rate. We're an Irish company and we store all our money in Irish accounts.
minimum tax if it means that there aren't countries that are just making a ton of money because they happen to have favorable rates. I think it's a little silly to have an office in Delaware and to say that this is like where your business is somehow earning money through or the Irish tax stuff. Like I think that's kind of silly. So I'm not opposed to global corporate or global like minimums or whatever, or some way to prevent like financial exits from countries for that. But like maybe that could be done in other ways too that make it you like penalize people that do business out of the country and try to like bring the money back or something. I don't know. Maybe a GMT.
Or incentivize people to bring money in the country like they did in the 2017 Act. They brought $2 trillion back into the country.
Sure, I think there are good ways.
$2 trillion back into the country. I have not heard it. I have not heard that. That could just be also, again, the problem with the issue with the origin tax is that it really easily allows companies to avoid some taxes by just officially having their, company set up in another country or whatever. So, like, if that company that was avoiding taxes earlier that I mentioned moves back to the U.S. or whatever, is that really bringing money back to the U.S. if nothing effectively changes? I don't know how good of a thing that is. And also, like, I don't know about the $2 trillion being brought back to the country. I would look that up and maybe find stuff on that. But I know, like, generally, we have like studies on the effect of corporate tax cuts on growth, and like they almost never that high. If I can find it, it's basically. Yeah, here we go. Corporate tax cuts. This is the funnel graph of like a bunch of different countries. I think it's like 44 different countries and like 200 different tax cuts. And like you can see, basically, almost all the results funnel around zero. Like they just simply do not have that big of an impact on growth.
To incentivize ways to bring things, but you agree, right? There are bad ways to incentivize money coming back to a country, right?
For sure,
yeah.
for sure. And we're never going to get rid of tax havens. It's not possible to get rid of tax havens as long as we have high taxes. One thing that's been interesting is since 2017,
as long as we have high tax, do U.S. even have high taxes compared to not tax haven countries? Like, I know for like middle class people, the actual effective tax rate in the U.S. is a lot lower than European countries. I don't think I don't know about corporations though. It could be higher for corporations, so I doubt it.
Global tax rate has come down across the board, and so it's been a bit of a race to the bottom, which is not necessarily a bad thing because that helps the entire world's economy, not just the U.S. economy. So that was one thing. But I wanted to go back to Caleb's question, which is. Harris and Biden have proposed significant tax increases on investors. Okay, start with the capital gains tax, an increase to 33%, 28% rate plus a 5% net investment income tax, which is just basically a 33% tax rate. Okay, which is a 60% tax increase from the
North America. These are random. What is the U.S. at? 19%, 25%. Okay, so it doesn't seem like we're. I know from like, again, for citizens, like where the effective tax rate on for people in the U.S. is actually pretty low. It looks like we're basically average, if like slightly above world average. But like all these European countries seem to be basically where we are. Although like the Eastern European countries seem to be a little bit below. But they also have value-added tax, which we don't have. A lot of their funding comes from value-added tax, but we don't have that.
Capital gains rate, which and then also proposed other tax increases on capital assets, like the unrealized capital gains tax. Like
inland federal taxes, probably not.
Well, the corporate income tax actually is an investment tax that way because it means that your stock portfolio probably loses value if the corporation's paying more money to taxes as opposed to having more money available for reinvestment or doing or paying out. I get your shrug there. And then
the only reason I shrug, like, I agree with you, like in the micro, but obviously in the macro, right? The argument would be that they might be losing a little bit of value of their portfolio because of the taxes that are being directly paid, but then they might be gaining value in their portfolio because more consumers have money to buy products from the company, right? It's like a back and forth ideally, right?
Okay, all right, I get where you're going there. So yeah. I am curious though about your thoughts on particularly increasing taxes on investment income, like capital gains taxes, like taxing gifts as capital gains, taxing estates for capital gains and estate tax. Eliminating 1031 exchanges, which are the lifetime exchanges on real estate, so you don't have to pay tax when you sell real estate.
I'm just not. The thing is, you'd have to convince me that raising the tax on capital income by not like a significant, not even like an unprecedented amount, like capital, taxes on capital income in the U.S. used to be higher than they are now. Like there were times where like right after World War II or whatever, like the effective tax rate was a lot higher than it is now. You'd have to convince me that that's so bad as to outweigh ending the independence of the Federal Reserve, 10% universal tariffs and the increased deficit spending from not raising them, right? Because if we don't raise the taxes, the deficit goes up, at least if we don't cut spending, which I don't think Trump has a very solid plan to cut spending. So
we should buy more real estate. I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Depreciation goes away altogether after. Or 100% depreciation.
No, the bonus depreciation does. We go back to what we've had for basically 40 years. So,
I think the question is.
But I'm most interested in the increase in the rates.
Yeah, the last
the capital
time
gains rates. I mean, for example, let me give you an
exactly.
example. So let's say that you're a business owner and you put all your money in your business. That this is your retirement. You don't have 401k because you're putting your money back in your business. This is basically your retirement. And when you retire, you sell that. And now you have a 33% tax rate because you're going to recognize all that in 1 year. You don't get to take it over a number of years. Like if an employee puts their money into a 401k, they're going to pull that out and be taxed on it in those lower marginal rates that you talked about earlier. They're going to be taxed on that as they pull it out. Whereas the business owner, because now, okay, so let's say it's $1 million, which is what Harris has proposed, but you sell your business for $3 million, that $2 million is going to be subject to that 33% tax, which is quite a bit higher than if they'd been able to take it over their retirement years like an employee does. So I am curious as to how what you think about those increases in capital gains rates.
I mean, I don't think capital gains is really optimal policy at all. If I had my perfect wonky world, okay, I don't think we would have any taxes in capital income. We would just tax consumption and tax resource rents and tax land. Okay, well, I mean, land kind of is a resource, but tax land, tax resource rents, tax consumption, right? There is no, that's just not, no Democratic candidate and no Republican candidate even understands half of those proposals, okay? So that there's just no room for that happening. What you would have to convince me of, and presumably Destiny too, is that the cost of raising these capital income taxes to not even their highest point in the last 50 years is so detrimental as to outweigh the positive effects that they're going to have on the deficit, the positive effects that they're going to have on inequality, the positive effects that they could potentially have on poverty, depending on what they're being used to finance, like all these other positive effects that I do think they could have. That it outweighs restricting or limiting the amount of financial capital available by a relatively small percentage points. We know, by the way, the elasticity of taxation in the U.S. is when it comes to capital flight, it's lower than other countries because we had just such strong consumer demand. Nonfon, do you want Washington to spend more or less than the revenue it takes in? It depends where we are in a business cycle. If we're in a good place in a business cycle, then I would really only want them to spend less than they take in. But if we're in a bad place in a business cycle, then they should probably be deficit spending.
I guess at the end of the day, like I said, it all comes down to managing government spending with government income. And if this is one of the ways that they can make more money by taxing capital gains a bit more, then like we said earlier, right? In terms of the Laffer curve, right? There's going to be some level of taxation that discourages heavily any future investment. There's going to be some level of taxation that too low discourages.
Yeah, but we're almost certainly not on the wrong side of the Laffer curve.
If we had a 5% capital gains tax, you could probably raise it to 6% and people would invest just as much, right? You would probably raise it to 7%, people would invest a lot. Would a 28%, would a 5-point gain, a 5-point increase on the capital gains tax discourage investment? I guess the question is
a 10-point gain, not a 5-point gain.
10 point. Okay. What would be the I guess what else would the money go into? I'm not sure.
I don't business cycle. What kind of mumbo jumbo is this? True. Here's a graph. This is not even unprecedentedly high. It's I'm just not convinced that it's that bad. Maximum rate of long-term gains, effective capital gains tax rate. I guess it isn't even unprecedentedly high. Realized capital is really high back then. Economy tanks every 8 years. In cycle, let me elect me and I'll prove it. Republicans, exactly. It's just if you're worried about the deficit, I don't think these are particularly inefficient taxes to do it on. At least raising them to 20% or whatever. It has positive, again, it has positive effects on inequality, as in reducing inequality, positive effects on the deficit, right? You're reducing the deficit, and I'm not I was not convinced that the small amount of financial capital that's gonna leave the country is gonna have that big of effect, or the capital that's consumed rather than invested and saved is going to have that big of an effect either. I don't think the elasticity is that high to justify it.
Well, so here
Are you worried about the deficit or just shilling Kamala Harris? I'm definitely not as worried about the deficit as you are, but I don't. You look like the OG YouTuber Fred. True, I am OG YouTuber Fred. My hair is like him. Right? I need a haircut, but I'm definitely not as worried about the deficit as a lot of people are. But like I don't like that our net interest payments are so high right now.
so statistically, historically, as I've looked at these numbers, 28% is the maximum capital gains rate you can have before you're significantly discouraging investment. But if you think right now, most people have a 28% capital gains rate because they have a 23.8% federal rate and they have a 4 to 5% state rate. So they're already at that peak. So if you look at, for example, Tax Foundation runs lots of numbers on this. And what they show is that you get over that level, just like you're suggesting, you get over that level, you actually bring less money into the government. So one of my points is,
I would have to see the data on that. I'm not convinced that the revenue maximizing point for capital gains taxes is 28%. I don't know if I would. I don't know if I think that. Plenty of evidence that higher capital gains taxes make people sell stocks less often, but this is the lock-in effect. In general, people don't change their behavior much in order to avoid capital gains taxes. Yeah, I'm just not convinced that the elasticity is that high for these taxes. Enough to outweigh all the potential positive benefits they could have. Meanwhile, dividend cuts, which are somewhat similar to capital gains tax cuts, don't seem to induce businesses to increase capital spending. On the revenue question, this study argues that capital gains taxes would be a big revenue raiser because people aren't likely to take their money out of the markets in a long term. I remember No Opinion linked a article once that was it was like the long run positive long run capital taxation. This. According to the Chamey Child result, capital should not be taxed in the long run. In this paper, we overturn this conclusion, showing it does not follow from the very models used to derive it. For the main model in Judd, we proved that the long run tax on capital is positive and significant, whether in intertemporal elasticity of substitution is below 1. For higher elasticities, the tax converges to 0, but may do so at a slow rate. After centuries of high taxes, the main model in Chamberlain 1986 imposes an upper bound on capital taxes. We provide conditions under which these constraints bind forever, implying positive long-run taxes. When this is not the case, the long-run tax may be 0. However, if preferences are recursive and discounting is locally not constant, a 0 long-run capital gains tax limit must be accompanied by 0 private wealth, 0 tax base, or 0 labor rates first best. I don't understand that part. Finally, we explain why the equivalence of positive capital tax with ever-increasing consumption taxes does not provide a firm rationale against capital taxation. We don't need to throw money at overpriced services. Eliminating the step-up basis as well, I guess. Step-up basis policy states that if you inherit stocks or house, you never have to pay taxes on the amount of its assets appreciated with their purchase. In fact, tax never gets paid by anyone. Inheritance just washes the tax liability away forever. This is a pretty obvious big loophole in the U.S. tax code. Even tax planners who advise you to use a strategy called a loophole. There's zero economic rationalization for why inheritance should be taxed less than other incomes. In fact, most people probably believe that rich heirs, especially undeserving of their windfalls, are dynastic wealth. Yeah, I like estate tax is probably. I don't. Republicans don't like estate tax for some. I think estate tax is probably like the best type of capital income taxation. But
seems like, and maybe I'm misreading this, but it seems like
add more to unfunded liabilities. I don't know exactly what you. Unfunded liabilities. I understand what road you're going to go down. You're like, Kamala Harris is going to add a bunch more to programs, and programs are permanent, and tax cuts are everywhere. Yeah, we've gone down this road 100 times before. You're dumb and can never understand any of this because you don't believe in anything. Okay, you don't believe in economics at all. I can't engage with you at all because you literally don't believe statements like the job market is better today than it was in 1933 has any truth value at all. Okay, so I can't engage with you at all because there's nothing I could ever say to explain this to you because you don't believe in economics.
There is this need for the Democrats to raise taxes on the rich for the sake of looking like they're raising taxes on the rich, whether or not it actually increases the revenue to the government.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess the question could be, if taxes are going up on the capital gains rate, like if they are bumped 5 or 10 points, what is the alternative? What's that money being spent on anyway? Like, what would people invest in instead?
You mean what would they do with that? Well, they're going to give that money to the government. What do you mean?
So they'd be spending that money.
What?
It's the same concept of giving deductions.
If they didn't have that tax, if they didn't have that tax
rate, a higher capital gains tax is going to discourage investment. But if money's not being invested, what would they do with the money otherwise?
Well, so it's they're not going to have them. What you're saying is, well, here's what's going to happen. You're not going to sell the asset. So what you do is you take liquidity out of the marketplace, because if I'm going to be taxed when I sell it, and of course this is why Harris wants this unrealized capital gains tax, right? This is actually the reason she wants that capital.
By the way, she basically walked that back. She doesn't. I don't think she's come out strictly against it, but it's not in her platform anymore. She's probably not going to do it. It would require Senate approval anyway, and it's arguments that it's not even constitutional, but.
Gains tax is because by increasing the capital gains tax rate from an effective 24% to a 33% rate, okay, which is the proposal, then what you're doing is you're saying, well, look, maybe I should just hold on to it, and I won't sell it, and I won't have transactions, which takes liquidity out of the marketplace, which actually depresses the marketplace because you don't have buyers and sellers.
Sure. So I definitely agree with you there, and I think that's a huge problem. But I don't agree that that's a problem.
Name one: the expanded child tax credit.
With increasing a theoretical tax rate, I think that's just a lock-in.
Also, public education.
Problem from taxing at the point of sale. And I feel like in an odd way, taxing unrealized gains would probably increase liquidity in markets, because there's no longer as much of a lock-in function if you're being forced to step up the tax basis year after year.
It does get rid of the lock-in effect, arguably, but...
Because, well, now, fuck it, like I've already paid taxes on this investment, even though I haven't sold it, I might as well... right now, if we're looking for investment opportunities, let's say that I have $1 million sitting in some taxable asset, and my tax basis, and that is
expanded child tax credit. Explain, because it reduces productivity, it reduces child poverty, and it's probably pro-productivity in the long run. There's a study on this I can link somewhere. I think Kamala Harris cites it actually, but it's like child tax credit. Is it this or is it this? Revenue effects of a child tax credit. I think it shows that it actually probably. I don't know if it's this. There's a study that finds for like every $1 put in a child tax credit, it actually has a positive fiscal effect to like $15 in the long run. So evidence there is a study, put it out there, put out by the people that support it. Yeah, they're not dumb. But there's other studies that show it too. I can the study's never going to be enough for you, by the way. You're just going to reject it entirely, even if I find it, but...
Right? Well, when I go to invest in any other opportunity, I have to imagine that I'm about to suck $950,000 of appreciation out, and I'm going to have to pay, I don't care if it's 28%, 38%, whatever, I'm about to lose a quarter of my money. So I'm locked in like crazy. But if I have to pay a step up in basis every year or whatever, however you would do that.
Find that led to increased future earnings and tax payments, improved health longevity, and reduced crime. Using conventional valuations, benefits to society outweighed costs nearly 10 to 1, with most benefits due to credit refundability. Like, you're never going to accept any of these studies. But I'm pretty sure there are multiple studies that find the same conclusion, but
to increase that, then the lock-in effect disappears. But
they are guessing because we don't have the child tax credit was implemented like last year. Of course, what? Not last year, 3 years ago at this point. Like what? Yeah.
I don't know if like 33 or 35% is significantly more locked-in than 25%. I don't know.
Childhood education credits have a tenfold return too. Yeah. Clearly, public education in general, I would say, there's probably studies on this, that clearly has positive long-run fiscal effects, but with hopes, dreams, wishes, I told nothing is ever going to be enough for you. You're just dumb. I don't know what to tell you. It's not even worth, it's not even worth engaging with these people. They're not going to accept anything ever. Do you think any program ever could theoretically have a long-run fiscal benefit? What about highways? I'm sure we could long run fiscal impact highways. I'm sure we could find studies that have assuming the long run multiplies 1.8, the interstate highway system has generated over $238 billion in additional economic output. Sure we could find this. I'm sure we could find long run fiscal impact of what's the other thing I mentioned? Highways, public schools. I'm sure there's studies on this as well. States should reverse course on defunding public schools. Fiscal effects of school choice. Heard interstate highways are good for I know, clearly there's at least some government spending that can have positive fiscal effects in the long run because you increase economic activity. Highways are clearly an example of that. I think this is about school choice. I don't know if there's got to be studies on this. Several challenges and uncertainties. Here's an overview of key factors. Just link the state law. I don't know if this. I don't know if this is gonna show what I want. I don't know if maybe there aren't studies on this one, but I don't think there's actually anything I could show you that would change your mind. I think you're just ideologically committed to the position that like government spending is bad. Okay, I don't think there's actually. I don't think it matters what study I show you showing like X program had a long run fiscal benefit. I'm pretty sure it's gonna reject it.
Fully convinced on that. I think that market is a problem, but I think that has more to do with how we treat the tax basis of
Well,
investments.
I mean, when they run the numbers, it actually is. When they run all the models, it is significant. But you do, of course, now open the door to the unrealized capital gains tax, which Caleb, I know you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, this is the point I wanted to get to. So I'm glad Destiny brought it up. Yeah. And I think he just opened up like
she probably not even going to do it. Like she stopped talking about it completely.
So let's
talk about this. First of all, it's very. I'm going to say this is one of the worst proposals out there. It is. It's really. I know you hate the tariffs. I hate the unrealized capital gains tax, and I hate it for a number of reasons.
As bad as tariffs.
One is that
10% universal tariffs and everything is bad as a unrealized capital gains tax. Really,
you are taking an enormous amount. Remember, when you take money out of the investment class and you put it into the consumption, then what you're doing is that you are
reducing growth.
You're reducing the amount that's being invested long term, and you're putting it into short-term consumption.
But like by 0.2%, I'm not convinced that 10% universal tariff, at least 10% universal tariffs would have a negative impact on growth of only negative 0.2%. I think that's about what the tax foundation estimates that like the unrealized capital gains tax would be.
Which, yes, it's like a sugar high. Okay, so that's what goes on. The worst part of the unrealized capital gains tax, though, is it is completely unmanageable, and it's such a disincentive to do anything. It's a complete disincentive.
Hold on, wait.
It's only on people earning over $100 million a year. It's there's a disincentive there. That is true. I'm not convinced that the elasticity is so high to outweigh the effects of the tariffs.
We need to when we talk about incentives, we have to compare these things to other things, right? Let's say that I live in an environment where, I am taxed at 5% if I invest in a particular thing, okay? That appreciates at 100% per year. And let's say that all of the other investment opportunities around me appreciate at 2% per year. It doesn't matter if you triple or quadruple my tax. My overall gains, my index is going to be way higher investing in that ultra profitable opportunity rather than investing in less taxed other things. So when we talk about how the tax will increase and it'll disincentivize one thing, what we should be talking about, what else is the money going towards? This is what I was saying earlier when I'm saying let's say that I have $1 million invested and the capital gains tax goes up, or let's say I have $1 million to invest and the capital gains tax goes up. It's not like I'm just not investing my money. It's not like all of a sudden it's a good idea to keep my money in the bank. Yeah, my tax rate might go up on my appreciated asset, but I'm still making money, right? As opposed to just sitting there losing money to inflation or whatever, or I guess like hoarding treasury bonds. So there has to be some other place where the money is going if we're disincentivizing things, because at the end of the day, tax rates and profits and all of these things are just competing for what is your good investment opportunity, and all of these things are factors in that, I think. Yeah.
But you're presuming that there's just as much money to invest, when in fact, when you're taxing it, there isn't as much money to invest. And so now what I have to do is I have to spend a higher proportion of my money on consumption than I do in investment, and there's not that investment going back into the economy. There's not that investment going back into production. I mean, if you look at the top 4 or 5 incentives in the U.S. tax code right now. There's 4 or 5 of them. Okay, the first one's business. You mentioned it several times. If I put my money back into my business, I don't have to pay tax on that money. Okay, the second would be technology, which Trump wants to bring back the research and development deduction, which is a huge need, by the way, in our country. The fact that it went away is a really horrible disadvantage, us versus the rest of the world that has much better tax incentives for research and development. But then go to real estate. Okay, look at how much housing has been built since 2017. In large part because of the additional incentives to invest in real estate through the bonus depreciation. And then you look at energy. What did Biden do in 2022? The big bill was the so-called Inflation Reduction Act.
Okay. I thought he was going to hate on Biden.
What was the main part of that? Well, that was energy, renewable energy incentives. Those are tax incentives, credits and deductions.
Sure. Okay.
And then you
but he's just proving people. You have to talk about elasticity.
Got fossil fuel tax incentives, and you have and then you have agricultural incentives, which are probably the biggest incentives that there are in the tax law. Are agricultural tax incentives. Because here's what the government wants. They want us to produce housing, they want us to produce food, they want us to produce energy, and they want us to produce jobs. And so that's where those incentives go, okay? But if you take out If you take the money out of those incentives, you have less money going in. And again, it's this mass problem. It's like compound interest works really well the fifth, sixth, seventh time you compound it, but it works terrible the first time you compound it.
Why do we, you keep saying we're taking money out. Can you explain?
Right. You're taking the money from the investors and you're putting it into the consumers. Now,
wait. Do the consumers set it on fire? Where does the money go next?
So you're assuming it's going right back to the rich people.
But yeah, if a poor person gets money from the government,
well, it goes to consumption.
Via taxation, and then they spend that money, they're probably spending it.
You're reducing financial capital. You are and that's why it reduces long run growth.
In places that are like heavily capitalized by capital owners, right?
Well, I think the argument he's trying to make, basically, you could argue it actually has it moves money from people with very low velocity and like very low propensity to consume to consumers who have a much higher velocity and higher propensity to consume. Which, I mean, you can argue maybe is a good thing sometimes, but
yes, but that's like saying, okay, a sugar calorie is just as valuable as a protein calorie or a vegetable calorie. They have different values. Okay, and this is your argument, I presume, is that you can't just rely on supply side, which I agree. You've got to have consumption, but what's that proportion? That's my question. What's the proportion of investment versus consumption? If it's all consumption, here's what happens. The biggest problem is inflation, because what happens is that, remember, the people who are investing, they have extra money. Okay, so and that's the argument for taxing them, because they have extra money, so they can afford to do it. They can. Okay, that's a fact. They can afford to do it. The challenge is that you're taking that money.
This is going to outweigh the decrease in deficit spending that probably also increases inflation.
It's like selling your gold supplies. Okay, you're taking that money, and now what you're doing is you're consuming it, which means that you're pushing up heavy on the demand side, but you're not increasing the supply side because you're taking money out of the supply side. So at the same time you're taking money out of the supply side, you're adding to the demand side, which is natural inflationary pressure.
This effect is almost certainly not significant enough to outweigh the positive effects on the deficit, which also causes inflation, by the way.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a balance, right? We have to talk about both ends, right? Because we can also
Right, it is a balance.
Hold on, wait. We all remember the graph, right? Our quantity produced, quantity supplied, right? Not all of those pressures are necessarily bad, right? Having people that are willing to pay more for certain goods or services can increase on the supply side the willingness to produce a given good or service, right? At a quantity demanded, more will be produced at a higher price paid. So the idea, I feel like it's just when you talk about when you remove money from one area and give it to another, you're talking about all the potential negatives, which are true, right? Removing money from investment can be bad. We want to capitalize our businesses. Giving an infinite amount of money to create upward pressure on demand could be bad. You're increasing inflation, you're making things less affordable. But every single economic transaction has another side to it, right? If you've got some guy who has $1 billion invested,
they also all have elasticities attached to them, which you probably don't be talking about too as well, Destiny. I don't know what data this guy's looking at. I'm just not convinced that even countries that have broader taxes than just unrealized gain taxes, like Spain, Norway, and the Netherlands, I think all have pretty broad-based wealth taxes. I don't think that they've contributed significantly to inflation. I don't think that we see all these super negative effects that Tom is talking about.
Company
they certainly do reduce growth, which, by the way, that's why I don't even like the unrealized tax. I think it's cringe, but it's just not like that bad.
Tax basis for this is $1 million. One, whatever the tax rate is, we haven't realized any of it from the government, right? And two, who's to say that the money is better off not even being taxed versus you tax the money from him, you pour it into people that are going to consume. When people go to Walmart and they buy goods and services, I mean, where does the money ultimately end back up in, right? In the suppliers that are now going to be expanding stores, hiring more workers, not to mention the social goods from giving people money so they can consume things and increase their standards of living and everything else. And yeah, so I understand what you're saying. Obviously, again, I said Laffer curve 50 times, right? There's going to be an ideal level of taxation we have to talk about, but we can't just pretend that all of these transactions are just bad on one side.
No, I actually agree. My question for you then is, what I'm hearing from you, tell me I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing from you is you think it's imbalanced right now, and that we need to rebalance it by actually increasing the demand side and decreasing the supply side. That's what I'm hearing. Am I hearing that right?
I mean, I'm not going to.
Goddamn! Why was the post fucking deleted? This was a good Twitter thread on how a way to implement an unrealized gains tax that actually would not be that bad. Fuck.
But you did it by not only allowing them to keep more money, but in a roundabout way, you're stimulating the demand side as well by continuing to spend at an exorbitant rate for the government as well, right? There's always two sides to all these transactions that everybody seems to ignore. Trump was just as much a demand side stimulator as any supply side alleviator because he deficit spent at record levels even before COVID.
Well, before COVID, his deficits were not nearly as big as they are right now under Biden.
That's true. Coming out, but Biden has an excuse, right?
Biden has an excuse. What's his excuse? His excuse is, here's the problem. And I want to get just to this. And I really appreciate you bringing this up. His excuse is we have inflation. Okay, so because we have inflation, we have higher interest rates, and it's the higher interest rates that are causing that deficit to be so high. And the higher interest rates do, in fact, have a huge impact on the deficit.
But he doesn't want to.
Okay, but where do the higher deficits come from?
Well,
they come from the higher spending of the 2021, the March 2021 American Rescue Plan, and the Trump 2020. Okay, both of those, neither one of those, my opinion, just in my opinion, were necessary to stimulate the economy. Both of them pushed demand side up without taking into account that we had this huge supply side disruption caused by COVID. Okay.
Sure. Well, there's just two quick facts on that. So one, you can say that they weren't necessary. I don't know if what we're competing against is a legendary, hypothetical, mystical version of America. We are outperforming every other country when it comes to inflation. So if we say that we could have done even better, that's fine. But you're talking about going from rank 1 to rank like super 1. Like the reality is whatever financial stimulus we did, which was higher than every other country.
And also, clearly, it's probably good to stabilize effective demand. Like there was plenty of excess capacity during COVID that wasn't being utilized because of the lockdowns, and that's why the stimulus was probably a good thing, and probably reduced almost certainly reduced unemployment. We had really good unemployment numbers. We still have good unemployment numbers. Yeah.
It clearly helped us to some extent because we are buoying off inflation better than every country. Number one. Number two, Donald Trump's pre-COVID deficits were still larger than Biden's current deficits, even with COVID. Trump had no excuse to run deficits at that level prior to COVID. His economy was booming. Everybody involved in the markets and watching the GDP knew this. Why, if Trump was going to spend that crazy with no crisis, who's to say he wouldn't spend even more insane now, still after COVID, with inflation being high, or the year-over-year at least, the cumulative being high?
So prior to COVID, his deficits were lower than Biden's.
His spending,
his deficits were lower.
I'm
not saying his spending were, but his deficits were lower.
It wasn't. His spending at that point was the highest.
I'm pretty sure most analysis show that his deficit spending was still higher.
It had been in
prior to COVID and taking COVID out of Biden.
In U.S. history for deficits, right before COVID, right?
It was higher, but Biden has far surpassed him.
Sure,
we're $2 trillion.
Is that including COVID on Biden's end?
This year.
Do what?
We're at $2 trillion for the first time this year in an annual deficit.
Sure, but again, it's in a post-COVID environment, right? So
right, but we're 2 years post-COVID. We're not 6 months post-COVID. We're 2 years post-COVID. And my point is, so here's what I want to get back to, if I can, Destiny. I appreciate your thoughts. Mm-hmm. Is that if you have this, you're putting all this money in, and you're going to get inflation. Because what I heard is that some inflation may be fine. It may be fine if you get inflation. The Federal Reserve, they've been very clear that their job is not to deal with spending. It's not the demand side from a spending standpoint. In other words, that's the government's job.
Sure.
Their job is two things only. One is interest rates, interest rates and employment. So basically inflation and employment.
That's what everybody knows. When you say spending, you're talking about the government spending, right?
Yeah, government spending, right.
Yep.
Right. So inflation and inflation, they want to bring inflation down, and they want to balance that with employment, right? That's their two mandates, according to them. Okay, so what happens if you get this upward pressure on inflation that we're talking about now? What happens is that now you get higher interest rates. What happens with higher interest rates? Now,
Are there any studies on this? Inflationary effects of unrealized gains taxes. No shot. Is it that high? Basically, proposal targets blah 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 blah. Potential increase in market volatility, possible capital flight. Capital flight, I'm just, again, not convinced that it would be really that high, especially in the U.S. Entrepreneurship and innovation could be stifled. This is probably the best argument. I don't even think this mentions inflation. Okay, but basically what he's saying, you're going to increase in consumption. Consumption so much that there'll be inflation. And then you're gonna reduce financial capital, which I agree with. I'll just say reduce long-run growth, and I know the mechanism by which that. More than tariffs? Really?
You're going to get severe disruption in the economy. I think we're lucky.
What is up, Nonfon?
Not much. we're going over this video. And I guess I'm actually probably less in favor of an unrealized capital gains tax than you are. I would guess, at least. I'm curious, what's your exact opinion on it? Because I don't know exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think the unrealized capital gains tax is, it's probably not truly optimal tax policy, but it's probably pretty much just fine. Like, it probably doesn't lead to any significantly negative effects, I would say.
I feel like I would mostly agree with that. I'm not aware of any. This guy, the Tom guy, keeps talking about how it's going to increase consumption so much that it's gonna have like major inflationary effects. I'm not aware of any studies on that at all, or like anyone.
Yeah, well,
that.
his argument that he made here is really dumb because he's basically saying that by taxing investment in order to redistribute money into consumption, right? So it's like, hey, like we take this money from investment and savings and I guess like the consumption of the wealthy disproportionately, and we transfer that to the consumption of disproportionately poor people and lower income people, middle income people, or like public purses that circulate money more horizontally, that essentially creates a substantially higher amount of consumption that causes inflation. The incredible problem with this argument is that you could implement the absolute exacting Kamala Harris tax policies, and it just doesn't raise that much money. Like you are just simply not transferring that much money to people in the form of consumption. You're transferring like you might be transferring $100 per person. Like it's just such a small amount of revenue that of course it's not going to cause some crazily aggregate level of inflation, right?
Yeah, I am not aware of anyone who has even argued that before.
I mean, we raise like currently the amount of money we raise on the capital gains tax, I think it's like $400 billion a year. It's such a trivially small amount of money. Like it's the same thing with the corporate income tax. You know, it's like people who say that the corporate income tax is like such a bad thing for economic growth. It's like, well, I agree. It's not like good for economic growth, but
clearly it's not optimal.
It's not like we get rid of the corporate income tax and like shit just starts really popping off. Like it's just it's just a more optimal tax system, right? Maybe you get an extra. If you did a truly optimal tax system, maybe we would grow like an extra 0.5 percentage point each year. Like it wouldn't be that big of a difference, I don't think.
And I'm also I like the concerns about, reducing financial capital or whatever. It's probably what I'm most concerned about with an unrealized gains tax. But like I can't imagine it's more destructive than even like universal tariffs would be, or like any of the other Trump policies. Like
obviously, yeah. Like if he's worried about, it is so necessarily the case that universal tariffs would cause much more inflation than an unrealized capital gains tax. Like that's an insane opinion to have. Now, obviously, this guy did. I think I got to about this point in the debate before I just kind of got bored and didn't watch the rest of it at this point. But it is also clear that this guy knows way more about finance and taxes than Destiny does.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And like Destiny is not making dumb points. And I feel like people are saying, because I while this debate was happening, I got multiple pings from people that were like, "Oh boy, like you've got to talk to Destiny. Like he's getting rolled right now."
I would imagine. Yep.
Like I don't think he did that badly. It's just like this guy clearly has a more sophisticated view of taxes. And I guess I don't know who this guy is, but if he's been a tax accountant for 40 years, like that's not really surprising, right? Like, because I think that's how he represented himself. He's like, "Oh, I've been a tax accountant, CPA for 40 years." It's like, okay, well, of course, this guy probably has a very sophisticated understanding of taxes and, like the mechanical implications of them. But what you'll find in finance, if you ever decide to do finance, what you'll find is that people will know just a whole shitload about the sectors of finance and like the interactions of finance and government between their specific sectors. But they just really a lot of the time struggle with that big picture of the economy as a whole.
Sure.
And like what the
Yeah, that
actual
makes sense.
impact of these kind of things are, right?
Yeah. That
Like your
yeah,
average finance person doesn't have the same economic opinions as your average economist. And that's because
Yeah.
the economists just are better at that than the finance people.
Yeah. I guess what's the thing like, I would be most concerned about is the impact on long run growth from, reducing savings. I guess you're not as concerned about that, or you just don't think the effects are big.
I think you could do Kamala Harris's unrealized capital gains tax plan, and there would be no noticeable effect on the economy at all. Like it would be like the Trump tax cuts. Like it would make seemingly an indiscernible difference in the economy. Because I mean the way that her tax is actually implemented is
Oh yeah, it's not nearly
in a
as
way
bad as
that
people say it is.
say again.
It's not nearly people present it in a horrible way. I feel yeah.
Yeah, like the way that her tax is implemented is essentially to try and get out of all these enforcement problems where you are essentially taxing unrealized capital gains of people with liquid assets, and you charge that over time, which is to say that it's a very smooth sort of expected outflow of cash, and you don't have to force sell to pay it if you don't want to. And if you have less liquid assets, they just essentially charge you a boosted capital gains tax rate at the point of sale. So essentially all that comes down to is when you actually sell, you pay more capital gains if you held your asset for a longer period of time. And that, in theory, would actually improve the capital gains tax because it reduces locked-in,
The lock-in
which is
effect.
like one of the main criticisms of the capital gains tax,
Capital,
right?
yep.
So, you could ironically see, like you could see a net improved economic circumstance in that regard. I don't actually know what the difference between like a premium on locked-in versus the disinvestment effects would be. But like, it's not inconceivable that it's actually net good for the economy if we are presuming that the locked-in effect is such a bad thing, right?
Yeah, it did seem like Destiny was
so-
at least able. I did hear him say the lock-in effect once at least, which is good that he at least had some conceptual knowledge of that.
Well, you're caught between a rock and a hard place if you're that guy, because you have to either say that the locked-in effect isn't that big of a deal, or you have to say that you have to somehow make the claim that the disinvestment effects are like they're both really bad, but the disinvestment effects would be like so significant that it would really hurt the economy. And it's like, dude, the amount of revenue that we're talking about here, which part of it is taxing investment, but part of it is truly just distributing consumption. It's taxing the investment and the consumption base of the wealthy. And so you would have to argue that, oh, well, okay, like out of the, $200 billion extra dollars that this tax raises, the $25 billion of disinvestment and misallocation of capital each year is literally just going to significantly destroy the economy. Really, a $25 billion misallocation of capital, that just destroys the economy. Like, that's all it takes. Like no, like, you dumb fuck. Like, this just probably isn't that big of a deal, right? It's so hard to argue that this unrealized capital gains tax would be a big deal,
Yeah, are you aware it's not even in her platform anymore, right? Like
Yeah, like she
it's not in
mentioned
her-
it like
yeah.
she mentioned it like twice and just never spoke about it again, right? And I apparently it must have polled badly or something, because that shit got fucking, that shit got linened out of the fucking photos, like in the USSR.
Yeah.
Like, people do not talk about that shit anymore. So
Yeah, I'm guessing it's just it pulled badly.
Yeah.
Mostly because Ben Shapiro and all the conservatives were saying she's gonna tax the unrealized gains in your house, which is just oh my god, I hate those people.
yeah, and that's not even true, because again, even on that, it's like this. I think this tax kicked in when you had more than $100 million
$100
in assets.
Yep.
And it's every dollar after that. And so it's like the idea that you could bullshit your way into somehow saying this would affect somebody's single family home that they own is just so laughably impossible. Like, it's not even like the inheritance tax where like people will say, oh, well, what about these small family farmers who have to pay some amount of inheritance tax? Like, it's like, sure, conceivably there probably is like a small family farm that's, you know, has $10 million worth of land and like they have to end up paying like a $300,000 inheritance tax. I guess that does kind of suck, but like $100 million, bruh. If you are struggling to pay your unrealized capital gains tax on your $100 million of wealth, that is like not a very. It's like, okay, well, boohoo, motherfucker. Like, holy shit! Like, this is not a big group of people, you know. There's no intuition pump you can make. I don't think that really ends up working out. Yeah, I think. I think it'll be interesting. You know, if Kamala wins, I guess maybe that idea will get more lip service in the media. But obviously, if Trump wins, it'll be like we'll be talking about the end of the republic, I guess. But yeah, I think the unrealized capital gains tax is just not a big deal. And yeah, I guess Destiny just hasn't really looked into it. I think part of the reason why he hasn't looked into it is just because he has said like, oh, I just think it's a bad idea. It's something I disagree with Kamala about. And it's like, all right, well.
But it's like obviously not as big a deal as like the stuff he focuses on, like all the Jan 6 stuff, but.
Yeah, I mean, like this guy's argument would be more coherent if he said like, oh, the child tax credit is going to cause some terrible level of inflation. Like that's a dumb argument. But at least that makes way more. There's like a magnitude that's maybe at least feasible, right? That you could see some serious demand inflation. Like it's plausible. But yeah, like I mean, that's the issue with, I think, even if you were to raise the corporate tax to 28%, like we cut the corporate tax, I think effectively essentially cut it in half with a combination of just lowering the statutory rate, but then I increased the this like essentially like the corporate tax equivalent of a standard deduction to where like the effective rate ended up lowering to like 16 or 17%, like essentially cut the rate in half. And it's like we really just didn't see noticeably giant like changes in economic growth or anything like that, right? I'm sure it improved things, but it's not like it fucking was some crazy change in the economy because it's just not that many dollars that are getting pulled out of the system, right?
Yeah. And I
like
guess,
not those taxes.
Talk about this ever. Presumably, it's going to have. Oh, I guess I mean clearly. I don't know how big the effect would be. It would probably have some positive effect on inequality. I would imagine. I don't know the.
I mean, of course, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Like, this is the argument for taxing inheritance and capital gains. Like, even if you had a really optimal tax system, in some regards, is like it's just more equitable. Now, I think that obviously, I think you should only tax the consumption base, and then. You would tax rents and, you would tax rents and externalities and land and stuff like that. But the actual sort of the filing that people would do at the end of the year would just be the sort of consumption base. And then you could just ratchet those taxes up to be super duper high. And you would be able to get a high level of after-tax inequality, a very high level of equality after taxes. But you'd also raise a ton of money for government services and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, you said it doesn't raise much revenue, but it's also like going to have some positive effect on the deficit, which this guy seems to not particularly like. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, like, optimal policy would just be all investments tax deductible, and we're going to raise the rates like crazy after that. I think that would probably be best. Because then you would kick out of all of this guy's arguments. Because you could literally just say, okay, well, it's just not. We just know that it doesn't affect investment because we literally just do not tax every single dollar you invest. You are not taxed on it. That lowers your taxable obligation dollar for dollar, right? And so it's like we know for a fact under this system we would only be taxing and redistributing one person's consumption to another, right? And so then he would have to make the argument. He would like have to bite the bullet and be like, okay, well, there's some values-based reason why like luxury consumption should be prioritized over lower income people's like less luxurious consumption. Like that's like an impossible argument. That's like an impossible thing to defend. Right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, clearly it'd be a lot better if he came out and argued for just a destination-based cash flow tax, but instead he's arguing for Trump's economic policy, which I don't think is remotely comparable to Harris's, but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, this, I guess he is some sort of financial guru, so I don't know what his actual deal is. I don't know, like, I guess maybe he does do a lot of debates like these. Like, I don't know what his, like, thing is that he makes content, or maybe he is just, like, a professional CPA. Like, I don't know what the, I don't know who this dude is. I don't know how this debate came about. But anyway, what are your election plans, Nonfon? You going to be covering the election?
Probably at least some of it. I don't know if I'll be. I'm probably just gonna be watching stuff and gaming in the background. I don't think I'm gonna be heavily like commentating over it. But probably, yeah. I know you're streaming the whole thing.
I'm gonna be streaming the whole thing, Nonfon. It's gonna be a grind. But yeah, you know, hopefully it'll work out and be nice and fun, and hopefully, good God, Nonfon, I'm releasing my prediction on Monday, my official prediction, and I could be so wrong. It might turn out that I am like super duper wrong about my prediction. That's gonna suck.
I think you're probably mostly right. Okay. Do you still have Arizona going blue? I don't know if I see that happening, but
I've got every swing state going blue.
Every swing state,
and I've got the Dems turning Ted Cruz into an unemployed bitch. You know, that's what I've got.
Yeah.
I've got flipping Texas in the Senate, and I've got Kamala winning every swing state.
I don't think we're getting that. I don't think we're getting that, buddy. Okay, I think she's gonna win. I just don't see. I don't see that. Listen, I know you.
Where are you
Texas.
from, Nonfon?
I know you. I'm in North Carolina. Okay, I know you know.
Okay,
Texas,
well you ain't from here. All right.
Yeah, I ain't.
You're one of them North Carolinian boys. All right.
Yeah, we're an actual swing
in
state,
Texas,
not a pretend swing state like you're as. Okay, so
listen. Okay. How many Democratic senators do you have? That's what I thought.
We could have one in 2026.
That's what I thought.
Roy Cooper. Okay, hasn't lost a single.
And we could
election.
have one in 2024. Nonfon.
Damn, I guess.
If you had the courage to believe.
Listen. I'm just not. I'm taking what I can get, which is Kamala Harris as president, and maybe a Republican Senate. So.
Goddamn, dude. Well, anyway, if we lose Montana and Texas, then maybe Lisa Murkowski will like go independent, and then we'll be back to a tumultuous 50. But anyway, well, all right, I'll talk to you later, bud. Unless you had any other questions or whatever.
No, thank you. Yep.
All right.
North Carolina about to make Virginia red as well. I doubt it. Can't wait for this election season to be over so we can go back to stimulating debates on economics. I know. I can't wait till we're in that. If we do win the Senate, it'll be just like a Connor Boy's favorite period. The 2020 to 2021 policy debates about the best way to do welfare policy. But listen, I just don't. I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. There's no way. There's no way when I see so many, when I have to argue with so many retards, okay? There's no way that we're going to get a sudden, there's no way we're going to keep a sentence. No way. No shot. Okay. I'm going that based on vibes, but NC going blue is dumb as? I don't think that. Our Republican governor here, like, fuck Trump super hard, dude. Now, a certain percentage of people are going to split their ticket. Certainly, a lot of people will split their ticket. But our Republican governor here called himself a black Nazi, said that he had pissy sex with his wife's sister, and watches trans porn. Okay? There's so many clips of him saying no abortion, no exceptions. He's pulling like 20 points behind and like 40 points behind for women voters, okay? A lot of those people aren't going to split their ticket. I just don't think it'll happen to that extent, okay? Anyway.
Frankly, I think
Continuing with some of this. I don't know if I'm going to watch all of it because it's 2 hours in.
we're lucky that we have not had a bigger downturn in the economy than we have. I don't think this was the Fed being smart as much as it was. I think we got a little lucky.
Again, isn't this a two-sided?
We kind of got lucky. Like, obviously, we were able to bring down inflation without bringing up much unemployment much. That's obviously kind of lucky. But.
Thing, no? Like higher interest rates can also cool off an economy and cool off inflation as well, no?
Well, that is what they did. Okay, it does. That's what they did. That's why we've had higher interest rates than we've had in 40 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got these high interest rates. What they do is, yes, they cool down. But remember, they also cool down investment. So they've had a huge impact on the supply of housing.
He's one of the most annoying human beings on
impact.
Earth.
The housing is not being built. Why is that? Well, because the interest rates are so high. And
well, who has a plan to build more housing? What?
Why are the interest rates so high? It's not that 5% is a bad interest rate. I mean, I grew up, when I bought my first house, it was 16%. That was bad. Okay, so historically 5% is an average rate. What's bad is when you go from 2% to 7% in a year and a half. That's what's bad, because you put such a jolt.
What do you mean bad? Like
to the economy?
Like obviously it has bad effects on some people. Like, yeah, obviously it has bad effects on mortgage rates. That's kind of half the point. It reduces demand for housing. Like,
that you have an enormous risk. I think we got lucky. But you put that enormous risk to the economy. And so inflation pressure. And the other thing is yes, inflation's come down, but prices haven't come down from where they were 2 years ago.
Sure,
they just aren't going up as fast.
Yeah.
The average person is really feeling the inflation.
Yeah, inflation will be cumulative. The rate, it's never going to deflate, right?
Right. It's not going to deflate.
Sure. And then also just to revisit, okay, so according to the for the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, for the debt that these two presidents accumulated, Donald Trump's non-COVID spending was $4.8 trillion.
I think I saw like a debunk of this. Some of the points seemed fair, and some of the points seemed not fair. Like, some of the points were like, oh, it's probably underestimating, slightly the, expenses caused by the infrastructure bill, but like, it's also it's also saying like, oh, well, interest rates are super high and it's all Biden's fault because of the inflationary spending earlier on. And it's like, really, dude? Like,
the CARES Act and then COVID relief that he provided was $3.6 trillion. Biden's, the American Rescue Plan, was $2.1 trillion. His non-COVID.
Also, I like how retards cry about abortion being legal when it's not. It was just left up to the states. You realize, like, we had a national right. I don't know if Roe v. Wade was a good ruling or not, okay? But what I care about is if women everywhere have access to abortion, because I think women everywhere should have access to abortion, okay? That's what I think is important. And that's why I'm in support of codifying it. I don't want states to be able to ban it, because I think I think abortion, before 20 weeks is essentially your, bodily autonomy without having any effect on any moral downsides, because I don't believe you're a moral subject until you have some level of conscious experience, which I don't believe happens in the fetus until about 20 weeks. That's the argument there. When Kamala wins, if you don't want to reside in the U.S., you're free to leave. True, she would serve 8 years, and Waltz would serve another 8. I don't know if isn't Waltz older than Kamala? I don't know if he's going to serve another 8, but there won't be another Republican POTUS for almost 2 decades thanks to good developed Trump.
Debt was 2.2.
Do you want to force your opinion on the entire union? Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like, I'm being ironic there when I say absolutely I want to force my opinion on the entire union, because I am based and correct. But like, I think you should have a right to do what you want with your body unless it harms someone else, okay? That's like my general principle. I don't think we should ban someone from doing something to their own body unless it harms someone else. I don't think we should allow states to ban people from doing what they want with their own body unless it harms someone else. I think being able to have bodily autonomy is an important right that you have, so long as it doesn't harm anyone else. Seeing as I don't believe abortion harms anyone else until about 20 weeks, because I don't believe they're moral subjects till 20 weeks I believe abortion literally kills another person. Yeah, I understand localists. Considering I don't think you're a moral subject until how many ever weeks, I think we should enshrine the right to abortion for everyone nationally.
Trillion. Trump spent like.
And then also there is an asymmetry in that, being pro-life, if you're for a national ban on abortion or even a state ban on abortion, you're saying women who want an abortion can't get them. But with a pro-choice position, you're simply saying only women who want to have an abortion can voluntarily choose to get one. You're not forcing anyone to get an abortion, obviously. So there's an asymmetry there.
Easy.
No, that 2.2 trillion. The deficit this year is 2 trillion. 1 year.
This was something released by the Trump and Biden on the national debt. This came out June 24th, U.S. Budget Watch, 2024, I guess. But
I can't speak to it because if you look at what the deficit is through September for the fiscal year ending September is right around $2 trillion. So I'm not sure how they come.
Fuck Destiny 2.2. It sounds like a rabbit squirrel. It did
2.2 over 4 years, non-COVID.
Which, well, I don't appreciate this dialogue. What is your guys'
I don't know. I think that might be. I don't know if that. It's probably the spending. Actually, I think I probably have it here. That's probably the spending approved under them. I think that's the 10-year spending approved under them. So it's not like the yearly fiscal deficit. It's just the 10-year debt approved by them. Or is it? This isn't what it is. Is it this? It might probably this. See how this is like net 10-year debt approved? This is I think this is the analysis he's citing, and then this is the debunk of it. But like some of these criticisms just don't seem that fair. Claim the American Rescue Plan was a COVID relief package. Fact. Well, it accurately includes the American Rescue Plan on 2021's Biden ledger. Elsewhere in the report, it accurately portrays the entire ARP as COVID legislation. Sorry, inaccurately. The COVID relief plan. So it's like, oh, some of the spending in this apparently wasn't like COVID spending or whatever. Claim President Biden have only added $3 trillion to the debt. According to CBO, President Biden has enacted legislation increasing deficit projections by a total of $4.8 trillion. They err by not using CBO data, significantly underestimating the cost of the Inflation Reduction Act, understated the cost of green energy by at least $500 billion. But these are all like estimates, I think. So I would assume the CBOs are probably more accurate. Then one of these about interest rates, which doesn't seem fair because obviously Biden's not the one controlling the interest rate. First 6 years of enactment tax shows that the increase in federal revenues accounted for more than $1 trillion, even after just inflation revenue remains $600 billion. This is saying it relative to counterfactual, right? I would imagine. Not just does it actually, not that it actually increased as much. It's just relative to counterfactual, where they didn't pass this act. It's 1.9 trillion higher, I would imagine. So that doesn't seem particularly fair either, but.
I just don't know the answer.
What is your guys' thoughts on the national debt? Because it seems like both parties aren't talking about it, or they're kind of talking about it, but no one's really taking it seriously.
Well, this is one place where I think that's an area I are going to agree.
Well, it's one of those things that no one's talking about.
I honestly think I am scared for my grandchildren.
Fuck, that fetus has no feelings. True, unironically though.
Because of the national debt. So there's only two ways.
What's the solution? Because it's raise more money, which
it's probably a combination. Honestly, it's a combination of raising more money and spending less.
But the unrealized gain tax is such a horrible way to raise more money.
It's both. You have to do both. You can't do just one. You can't just reduce spending. You can't just increase taxes. It won't work. You've got to do some combination of them. And I'm not. You'll be shocked at this, Caleb. I'm not opposed to, let's say, a surtax on somebody making over $5 million. They're not going to miss it. It's not. I don't think that 5%. So
you want to explain what that is?
Hillary Clinton. So Hillary Clinton proposed a surtax on people making over $10 million. I think it was a 4 or 5.
A surtax is in like a surcharge in an income tax. Like, isn't this clearly this is reducing savings too? Are you kidding me? You're going to crash the economy, and then you're giving money to poor people. That's going to they have a much higher propensity to consume and higher velocity. That's going to be inflationary too.
I have no issue with that. I actually think that's fine. There's a revenue raiser right there. Okay, it's just another tax rate. It's a surtax. Okay, it's not a tax on investment. It's just tax on income. So it doesn't single out investment.
It doesn't single out investment, but it also doesn't single out consumption. So you're still taxing you're still taxing savings,
which is the important thing. And it didn't apply to
you're reducing the amount you can invest on the front end as well,
like ordinary income. So I don't have an issue. I have no question. We need to raise some revenue, but we also need to reduce expenses. One of our challenges, of course, and this is a question I have for you, Destiny, is, are you concerned, because you seem to be concerned about the national debt like I am. Do I have that right? First of all, are you concerned about the national debt?
I'm not concerned about the conversation about the national debt because I feel like the conversations around it are just really bad. The issue is that, if you ask somebody, like, what is or I guess I could ask you, how much debt should the United States have?
I have no idea.
Okay, that's a better answer. That's good. Okay, because a lot of people will say zero, which is not true, right? You
No,
always want to be
that's not true. And if you look at Japan, they're at 200% of GDP. They're not failing.
Sure,
So
yeah.
True.
Yeah, so I don't know what the ideal debt should be. It
Yeah,
should
I don't
probably be
either.
percentage of GDP. I do think we're spending a lot, and we've added a lot recently.
Agreed.
But I guess the thing that's
I
confusing
mean,
to me
I don't think the fucking percentage of it matters. Right? That's GDP matters that much. I think what matters usually is the, net interest paid on the debt. Even if we were running a 200% debt to GDP, if all that debt, was really cheap to finance, then so what?
I don't understand about conservatives is if we talk about the debt and they talk about their concerns for the debt, like you said, you either have to raise more money or spend less money.
Yep.
And, people can sit here and talk about the budget, but a lot of people, when they talk about the budget, they're only talking about the discretionary spending, which is
Right.
what, 30% of the federal budget?
Very small percentage.
Yeah, we're not even talking about non-discretionary. What, are you going to have Republicans cutting, Social Security?
Social
Yeah,
Security.
that's not happening. So I guess the confusing thing is for being so concerned about the debt, it feels like Donald Trump has a platform that would apply an unfathomable amount of upward pressure on things related to inflation. So global tariffs, these are massively inflationary,
obviously.
destructive to
Yep.
consumption and supply chains. You've got mass deportation of labor here, right? You're going to drive up prices, right? You're going to drive up the cost of labor to untenable amounts potentially, right? Which is going to be inflationary. He's talking about pressuring the Fed. He admitted to trying to pressure Powell, right, into keeping
True.
interest rates low in his own
Yes,
term. He says he wants to keep
Powell
interest rates low when he
said
comes
this
back.
as well,
He
yes.
wants to eliminate all these random income taxes, reducing tax receipts. He wants to maintain his prior tax cuts, right? Reducing tax receipts. I don't know where these spending cuts are supposed to come from. He doesn't talk about them ever, and he talks about all these income reducing cuts, and we have to service interest on the debt. So I just don't know how anybody could ever look at Donald Trump, a guy who spent like crazy when the economy was good, and think that this is the guy that I'm going to choose for fighting the debt and fighting the deficit.
moving
Yeah.
to Canada on Wednesday. I
So,
don't think he's doing that.
so
but-
let's going back to the deficit. I agree. I mean, we don't have I don't know what the magic number is. Frankly, I don't think anybody knows what the magic number is. I don't think the smartest economist in the world knows what the magic number is because we've never been here before. This is new territory because it's a worldwide economy. It's not a U.S. economy only. It's a worldwide economy. So you can't say, well, it's like, the Byzantine area or whatever, because that was a country, not a global. My question for you, Destiny, though, is let's go back to something you brought up at the very beginning, which was the child tax credits, which socially we go, okay, we're all empathetic for that.
Okay, well, we're talking about a child tax credit now, but so I'll answer the chat. Why do you feel it's okay to restrict countries, municipalities impeding access to abortion services in an area where 95% of people, including women, are against abortions because they just don't have to get an abortion? I believe you should have the right to do with your body what you want unless it impedes on somebody else's rights, essentially. I don't believe abortion does that. Now, we disagree on that, obviously. We could have that argument. But I believe, as a general principle, you should have the right to do with your body, to have bodily autonomy, unless it interferes with somebody else's right. Okay, and considering I don't think fetus is a moral subject until about 20 weeks, I believe you should have the right to an abortion, no matter where you are, no matter what the people around you think, because it's your body, your choice. Essentially, yeah.
Okay,
Obviously, the actual area we disagree is whether fetuses count as moral subjects, but that's a different debate.
especially the child care credit. I'm actually more empathetic for the child care credit than the child
You're
tax.
forcing other people to allow it. That's interfering with somebody's right. I don't agree with
Tom,
that.
what's the difference?
The difference is that one's a credit because it's helping you to pay to
And
take
also, to be clear, they still have the right to vote at a national level. Obviously, I understand all your subsidiarity arguments with that, but
drop a child off at a daycare center while you go to work, while you be productive. Okay. Whereas the other is a credit for the fact of having a child. Okay. And it has nothing to do with whether you work or not. Okay. So that's the difference. My question is, are you concerned, Destiny? And because this is one of my concerns, I'm concerned that you get the child tax credits, or earned income credits, or these other
and they disincentivize
Harris
work?
proposals become entitlements. Because once you give them, it's
become
really hard to take
entitlements?
them away. Now, you can give them during COVID and take them away. You can say, oh, that was
universal child allowance based, more based.
That's different. But you give them now, how do you take those away? Because what you're doing is if you do take them away, you're actually giving that family a decrease in their standard of living. Are you really going to do that? And that just puts more pressure.
I mean, this probably is, like we looked at some of the studies earlier, it's probably fiscal positive in the long run because you're, increasing, decreasing childhood poverty and, increasing their education and things like that.
On the deficit. So what do you think about, do you think that they'll become entitlements?
It's probably less deficit in the long run. But,
I don't know. I mean, maybe, but regardless of if that's true.
but also, based universal child tax allowance, based policy.
And we could go into the benefits and the pros and cons, I guess, of those credits. All of this would pale in comparison to any hypothetical destruction it would wrought on the economy compared to the global tariffs that Donald Trump is suggesting, which is just, that's like a doomsday scenario.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second if we
Yeah,
can.
let's talk about tariffs because this is
Let's
where.
talk about tariffs.
All right,
So right now, today, the U.S. has a severe tax disadvantage to the rest of the world because the U.S. has no value-added tax. So if we export to France, that export gets a value-added tax of 20% tacked on. If we import from France, there's no value-added tax tacked on. So what that means is that
First of all, the solution to this is not tariffs. The solution to this would be our own destination-based tax, right? We should just do our own. Destination-based tax, whether it be a value-added tax or a destination-based cash flow tax. But also, it's not really equivalent. Luckily, the solution is well established, switching to a destination basis. A destination basis would tax the profits of a good at their location of sale, removing the capacity for such methods. Such methods being like being able to, base your company in fucking Ireland when you do all your shit in America. In practice, this would entail a reversal of how imports and exports are treated. Rather than taxing exports and leaving imports tax-free, a destination tax applies to imports and leaves exports tax-free. This process already occurs with value-added taxes, and despite what it may look like, the tax on imports is not a tariff. Under a tariff regime, imports are taxed more heavily than domestically created and consumed goods. Border adjustment, on the other hand, distinctly puts both on a level playing field by taxing the profits derived from both at the same rate. So it's not really the same, and tariffs have other negative effects that
French production has an advantage on their exports over a U.S. export.
Also, France is our ally. I don't really care, but
a tariff is one way.
Wait, can I ask a quick question on that?
Yes.
'Cause I genuinely don't understand this one. I thought that a value-added tax, I thought that you pay tax when you add value at a part in the production. If I were to export a good to France and they were to just sell it as is, can they VAT
what's up,
that?
Felix?
Oh, absolutely.
Fairy
Yeah.
tale.
You VAT imports, you don't VAT exports. Exports are excluded, imports are taxed.
A destination-based
100%.
tax.
Okay.
Yeah, but like...
I'll take your word for it, sure.
Yeah, 100%.
It's
So,
not the same as a
we have that
tariff.
disadvantage. And while I'm not a fan of a tariff being the solution to that, what is the difference in your mind from a 20% tariff on a good coming in from France and a 20% VAT on a good going into France? What's the
These are not...
difference? It's the same number. It's 20%.
I don't think that's an accurate... I don't think it's accurate. But in my brain, it's not calculating why it's not accurate. This is taxes... Today, leaving imports tax-free, destination-based tax applies to imports and leaves exports tax-free. The process already occurs. Tax on imports is not a tariff. Under a tariff regime, imports are taxed more heavily than domestically created and consumed goods. Border adjustment, on the other hand, distinctly puts both on a level playing field by taxing the profits from both at the same rate. Border adjustment tax versus tariffs. Border adjustment is not a tariff. Tariffs are barriers that raise prices, reduce available quantities of good, and create economic burden on border adjustment tax is not a tariff. A tariff is a tax on products from foreign countries, while border adjustment tax is a comprehensive reimagining how the U.S. income tax works. Moreover, tariffs lead to higher prices for U.S. consumers and reduce trade. By contrast, a border adjustment tax is not expected to increase U.S. prices in the long run or to lower trade. Wait, is this not... Is this even in here? No. Okay, awesome. How does our destiny off in the debate? Bring up the times when his wife got railed in his own home live on stream. He melts down in 2 seconds. Yeah, probably because it's not... Probably because when you go into, like, have an actual debate with someone, you don't expect to just be arguing about whether or not you're a cuck. That's just, like, a dumb... Like, what? Like, why would you... That's just so bad faith they bring it up in debate. Like, yeah, obviously. This makes border adjustment policy at a levels of playing field. Okay, something like the VT. Since exports are not consumed domestically, but imported goods and services are, this makes border adjustment policy at a levels of playing field. All goods are consumed in the U.S. face the same tax rate regardless of where they're produced. So, I mean, he's just, I don't know, maybe he just doesn't know this, or maybe he's assuming Destiny doesn't know it, but like, a tariff taxes foreign goods at a higher rate than domestically produced goods, whereas like a destination-based tax just ensures that both are taxed at the same rate. So, one of these is clearly different. But
I mean, I would have to read more of the comparison for the tariff stuff because I feel like Like, let me think about that for a second.
Yeah, this is my whole thoughts on tariffs. Is we're just increasing the costs. We're indirectly passing down the cost to
No
consumers.
question. It increases the cost of goods. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's in a way.
There's no question in all of the literature. There's no question that the consumer pays that tariff.
At least he bites that
Well,
bullet.
I think it ends up being split kind of 50-50, right? Ultimately.
I think it's higher than that. I think the consumer pays more of that. Than the producer.
Yeah, because you have to eat some of the costs because the consumer's going to eat all
Right. Presumably, there is a limit to elasticity.
Wouldn't one different be for a tariff that a VAT is going to be applied evenly to everything in your economy, like things that are produced domestically as well, whereas for a tariff.
And that is the argument for the VAT over a tariff. You hit it right on, and that's why the Tax Foundation doesn't have a problem with VAT, but they do have a problem with tariff. But when you're looking at comparative purposes,
Wait, why?
you're going.
So he did know. So did he just assume Destiny didn't know? Why wouldn't he at least say he should have? If you're making that argument, you should be clear. There is a difference there because the VAT just taxes everything in the country the same. I feel like that's
Still,
bad faith.
we're making it cheaper to buy a French good, a good from France, than the French buy the same good.
France is our ally. I don't say China. China, I would maybe agree if you want, but I don't care. France is, if we're chill with France.
Perfect example is Boeing versus Airbus. Airbus, no VAT when they send it to the US. Boeing, VAT when you send it to France. That's a perfect example of a competitive disadvantage that we have. And absent us doing a VAT, which is wildly unpopular in the US, they actually tried that during Trump's first term, something similar, a border tax, something like a
tax,
VAT. It's not popular. Frankly, the only way it would ever be popular is if you eliminated the income tax entirely by repealing the 16th Amendment. And then I think people might be okay with it. But until then,
so this guy does understand all the optimal policy, but somehow he's still in favor of Trump's tax plan just because Kamala's plan isn't optimal policy, and neither is Trump's. But I don't understand how he thinks Trump's plan is better if he actually fully understands most of this optimal policy.
The challenge is you still do have a competitiveness issue when it comes to goods made in America shipped to France versus goods made in France shipped to America.
Okay, let's walk down this path for a minute.
Sure.
If that is the case, are we not just gaining an advantage by their government spending money to make a good or service cheaper for a U.S. citizen?
For who? An advantage to whom?
So
the
let's
consumer or the producer. You are making it cheap. You are saying it is an advantage. It is an absolute advantage to the American consumer.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So it's
a disadvantage to the American producer.
Well. So the issue that I have with saying it's a disadvantage
but is the benefit to consumer bigger than the
American producer? I would agree with that if our production was hurting. But if we're deploying our capital in more productive ways, then isn't that just a net win for us? Like in the United States, let's say that we make like macro widgets, right? But we don't make any micro widgets. But the micro widgets are what are used to make macro widgets, right? Let's say that we import something from like China stand or whatever, right? And let's say that China is like, oh, we're going to subsidize the fuck out of it and VAT or whatever to make it so we can export you a ton of micro widgets. With your economy, when you go, okay, well, if you guys want to waste your government spending and tax your citizens and all that to subsidize your shit, then we'll just buy that at reduced cost and we'll just make macro widgets, which is a more productive deployment of capital anyway. Aren't we just like winning from that exchange? Isn't that good? Like the other hand, it feels like what we're saying is like, hold on, we're not going to let you do that. You're not allowed to fuck your citizens over and give us an advantage. We're going to screw our citizens over too, so that nobody wins. And now we're going to bring all this base manufacturing back here. We don't want to make Teslas anymore. We want to make gearboxes, and we want to make wheels, and we want to make fenders instead. I don't know why that would be the answer. I guess I don't understand that the connection there. Yeah.
If you were saying, well, China's going to give Chinese, they're going to make up for it. To the Chinese.
At least we're talking about China now, not
producer.
France. I don't care. I don't care for losing in trade to France. Okay, even if such a conceivable thing is possible, losing in trade to France, I don't care because France is France and they're our ally.
In order for them those two to offset, you might have a point. But the U.S. doesn't do that. We don't say, look, Boeing, we're going to somehow reduce your costs by 20% because you're going to have to increase your price by 20% when you send it to France. We don't do that. So maybe if we did some kind of a mechanism like that, maybe you're right. Maybe that would work.
Well, why do we even need to do some kind of?
Well, you were just talking about China. They're incentivizing that, but they're penalizing the producers if they're incentivizing us. Right?
Doesn't it free us up to do more productive stuff, though?
Inability to follow this point.
Would I be more proud? And this gets into very loaded, normatively loaded territory because people feel a certain type of way about base level manufacturing. Oh, I want to make cars again in Detroit and the whatever jobs, right? And I understand to some extent, there are emotional ties to that, but people aren't scrambling to buy China's airplanes or Russia's airplanes. They're scrambling to buy F-35s from the United States, right? Elon Musk didn't go to make SpaceX or Tesla.
There's a reason that they're not scrambling to buy Chinese electric cars, and it's only because of tariffs.
Do you really think that? You don't?
Oh, absolutely. Because we actually prohibit it. We don't.
What did he say? Sorry.
United States, right? Elon Musk didn't go to make SpaceX or Tesla.
Right, but there's a reason that they're not scrambling to buy Chinese electric cars, and it's only because of tariffs.
Do you really think that? You don't
Oh, absolutely. Because we actually prohibit it. We don't just add tariffs. We don't let them sell their Chinese cars. When was the last time you saw a Chinese electric car in the U.S.?
Do you think that all of the higher level goods that the United States produces, you don't think they're that much better than any other part in the world?
No, absolutely not. No, do you think U.S. cars are better made than Japanese cars? Do you think
I don't know.
do you think a Chevy is a better made car than a BMW?
I don't think automobiles would be the thing I would push for.
He's talking about big tech. He's talking about iPhones. He's talking about so many things that make America's economy like actually unique, not just like manufactured commodities.
I'm just looking at an example that is, I think, a pretty relevant and obvious example, because cars are one of those things that we make and other countries make.
Sure,
and definitely, I will tell you, my wife loves the Hondas and she loves the BMWs. I've never seen her even consider buying a Chevy.
Sure, but when we think about like one of the largest export markets I think we have is related to like information technology and services around services around that. Yeah. This is something that America does better than the rest of the world, right?
Agreed. Mm-hmm.
And I don't
and
see
right now what you're seeing right now. So let's go to that one. So that's where we come back to this global minimum tax. What you're seeing is Europe is after those global technologies to tax them heavier, because yes, we're better. I mean, we're first, we're better. We own that. We literally own that market worldwide. Now, we're not better in things like semiconductors. Taiwan owns that market. We're trying to get that over here, my backyard in Phoenix. We got 2 big plants going on. One, we're trying to bring those Taiwanese semiconductors over here, which I think is actually I like the semiconductor bill because of that. But the question, and so what other countries are doing is that they're actually, I think what's missing in the tariff discussion, and I'm not a huge tariff fan per se, what's missing in the tariff discussion is what other countries are doing. And so I think where you have to be able to say, well,
I mean, I'm more like, even if other countries are whatever charging us to import, really they're charging themselves, right? But like I don't see like that's to me that's separate from the point of like, is it maximizing economic welfare to impose tariffs? Especially universal tariffs, because again, Trump's proposal is universal tariffs, not does include our allies, that includes countries that aren't tariffing us, which it just seems fucking insane and unhinged. But
wait a minute, you can't do that.
Doesn't make points. He regurgitates Wikipedia. True, that's all for Israel Palestine. That's actually all he did. He only ever read Wikipedia. I can't believe he was able to argue with Finkelstein and only ever read Wikipedia. That's crazy. Stop watching, and retarded streamers can't stop watching his videos. True.
With impunity.
Or advanced levels of innovation. Like
we are not going to allow you to ship your cheap goods to the U.S. with impunity and then tax our goods with impunity so that we can't export those goods, which is exactly what Europe in particular is trying to do with the technology.
Why wouldn't those, if we think that taxes are bad?
But they're taxed at the same rate as with VAT, they're taxed at the same rate as the domestic producers in the country are taxed. They're not taxed anymore. That's not true. They're not taxing the the imported good anymore than they're taxing the goods in their own country. It doesn't put their goods at an advantage like a tariff does. Like
if we think that taxes are bad in the United States, if you're telling me that they disincentivize investment and they disincentivize all these other things, why is it that taxes are good when other countries use them against us?
I don't think taxes are. I actually don't think our current tax rates. I actually think our current tax rates are pretty appropriate. I don't want to see them increased significantly.
Which I think do for everything, right?
Which I think, because there's, again, what we were talking about. There's this
elasticity. What is the explanation for it? Because it feels like when we talk about taxes in the U.S., it's like taxes are bad. We don't want to, tax this stuff because it discourages all these horrible things and we don't want the government using the money. But then when it comes to other countries, and it's like they put huge VATs on our stuff and they put massive, taxations on all of our imports. Why is it that like taxes are good for those countries and it helps them, but it
doesn't help them? You said earlier, our inflation rate is lower and our production is higher than every other country in the world. That's part of the reason. If you look at Germany, Germany has a 70% tax.
Value-added tax, really? That reason?
70%.
Oh, I guess he's not just referring to value-added tax. He's referring to all their taxes, 70%
at the point that
tax rate.
Tariffs might not be a good thing across the board.
Well, look, I think there are strong arguments because I spend a lot of time with my friends at the Tax Foundation, and they really hate tariffs. Okay, they really do. My challenge is I don't like this idea that that we pay taxes to other countries and don't expect them to pay taxes to us.
I don't understand what he means. We pay taxes to other countries. Thank you for the follow. What's that say? Sorry, I can't read it. Echo Shay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Welcome to the stream. I know they're taxing themselves. We're not the what to some extent. Again, he's talking about VAT. So one, that's a simplistic point, but I agree to an extent. Like one, our exports to them are taxed at the same rate as the domestic producers under VAT, right? It's not like their domestic producers have an advantage like a tariff would do. A tariff would put their domestic good at an advantage. This just puts them on a level playing field. But also even if they do impose a tariff, to some extent, the tariff is the incidence falls on us to the extent that exporters lower their prices to compete. But the vast majority of the tariff incidence falls on the country imposing it. So if France imposes a 20% tariff, the vast majority of that, probably about a 20% tariff, is probably going to be over 18.5% of that incidence falls on France, not in the U.S. The study I'm quoting for that is looking at China and looking at the effects that tariffs on China had. And it found like 18.5% of the incidents being with the U.S. and not China. Only 1.5% was from lowered prices from Chinese exporters. It'd probably be even higher in other countries because China is a lot more willing to subsidize its exports than France would be, right? China is heavily export reliant, so it's subsidized it. Nonfon, I rescind to confess I'm voting for Trump. Why on earth are you voting for Trump? Hello, you're
It's a competitive issue.
Actually, no, maybe it makes sense for you. Maybe you really don't like trans people that much.
Wait, how do we pay taxes to other countries if there's a VAT and we said that most of the cost is passed on to the consumer? Aren't they just making their own citizens pay the taxes?
Well, yeah, but their citizens are paying those taxes, but
True.
Some of it, as you said, some of it is passed on to us. The producer is going to pay some of the taxes.
Well, it makes us less competitive.
The tougher part is it makes us less competitive.
It makes us the exact same amount of competitive as the domestic producers. Again, the value-added tax puts them on a level playing field. It's not like a tariff, which puts the domestic producers up ahead.
Because would you disagree that
which that's why Trump wants the tariffs in general?
The cost of production in the U.S. The reason we import so much is cost of production in the U.S. as a general rule is higher than the cost of production in a lot of other countries. That's why we buy clothing from Vietnam. It's cheaper to buy clothing from Vietnam than it is to buy clothing made in the U.S.
Yeah, but it also frees up our citizens to, one, have a higher standard of living, and two, buy other things, right? Like if I want to buy an instrument for my kid at a local shop that produces, high quality trumpets, if I can go to Walmart and buy cheap clothes, I can buy like a custom made U.S. instrument at home. If all of a sudden we bring all our manufacturing back and now I have to buy, $50 for a pair of like children's like t-shirts or whatever because they're all made at home, I feel like there's an opportunity cost. It's almost like a broken windows fallacy.
I actually agree with that. I think that you have I would not want to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. at any cost.
Which is what the tariffs are designed to do, right? So like in every single way.
What I'd like to see is the investment incentive, so that, for example, take Musk and
why don't you trust like Kamala to do that way more? Like, didn't Biden and Kamala do that way more than Trump did? Like, why wouldn't you trust them to do it more? Like, what?
Teslas, okay?
I don't even know. Honestly, you could probably get. Listen, we made the Democrats YIMBY, okay? If the wonks somehow ended up making the Democrats YIMBY, the wonks can make the Democrats destination-based cash flow tax pilled. Okay, we could do it.
A lot of people to make a Tesla.
Why does his Destiny look so studious? He looks like a therapist.
It's all robotics. Right. And so it's innovation, it's technology. So what you want to see is, rather than having it cheap because it's cheap labor and they're in sweatshops in Vietnam and Indonesia, you want it cheap because the technology is good. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see that's why it becomes cheap, not because of cheap labor.
Sure. But I mean, at the end of the day, these are all market forces competing with each other, right? Like at some point,
he's too masculine to be lesbian librarian. Even a butch lesbian. He's too much of a sigma male.
Machines are going to outperform humans. It just depends on how low the wages can be. But I mean, like there's weird moral values behind it too. Like we say, like, well, we don't want like there to be sweatshops in other countries. Well, what if you take away the sweatshops and then they go to like subsistence farming, right? Like sweatshops aren't great in the U.S. of course, and in a lot of countries sure, but it might be like a country's path towards industrialization and middle class wages eventually. Like there are roads and steps, and the country is free to negotiate as well, right? It's just one thing that I notice when we talk about a lot of like tax and econ policy is that for some reason other countries are doing things that somehow are so good for them and they're screwing us over. But then if we were to do those things, they become bad for us, and it makes me wonder. Like I think that deportation and tariffs, these are both great examples of this. People will say, in one breath, they'll say Mexico has this unfair advantage because they have so much cheap labor. They're killing us in manufacturing. We can't allow this to happen. And then in the next breath, they'll say, we need to deport all these guys back to Mexico. And it's like, well, hold on. If they're killing us in manufacturing because of all their workers, why don't we just let them fucking come up here and then make it in the U.S.? Like, wouldn't that be better? Like, if we really think that that's like killing us, why not just like eat all their workers and have them come up here and give them make here, right? Wouldn't that be better?
I mean, that's actually a supply side argument.
Yeah. So I guess when I look at like the people that support like the Trump tariffs, they're just so bad. And like, if you want to subsidize your economy and you want to make things cheap as hell, and you want to do that to the detriment of your own economy, because I think in a lot of ways subsidies can be good and subsidies can be really bad. I think we both agree. There are good subsidies, bad subsidies. If you want to subsidize the craziest stuff out of your economy, and then we get to import that, I mean, we're just like gaining off of your crazy tax planning. And again, there's pros and cons to everything. But man, a 20% tariff across the board, that would just like you agree, that would be like devastating. to the U.S. economy, right? Like that would be more devastating than any $6,000 child tax credit or whatever, right?
Well, certainly more devastating than $6,000 child tax credit. Baby tax.
At least he says that. Thank
credit.
you.
You know what? What's interesting is Biden, the one thing that he only kept one thing of Trump's, and that was tariffs. The only thing he kept. I just find that interesting.
Well,
I'm not going to make comment on it, but he did.
I think he didn't keep all of them. He did keep the steel tariffs.
I'll make a comment on it.
I bet you do love tariffs.
The difficulty, I think, when it comes to tariffs is it's very easy for me to tariff somebody. I can look at somebody and go, 20% tariff, screw you. But obviously, they're going to retaliate, right? Okay, well, fine, 20% tariff, screw you. To levy a tariff is easy, but to bring
Even if without retaliation, they appreciate exchange rates, and that reduces exports too. Tariffs are not just a tax on import. They are effectively a tax on trade altogether because you also reduce exports because like I just said, even without explicit retaliation, exchange rate appreciation hurts your exports, and B, it's very likely that they are going to retaliate, and that's going to reduce exports as well.
down, well, now I have to negotiate some kind of deal because I can't just remove my tariff on you while you've tariffed me because now I'm getting screwed, right? So I think it's one of the reasons why the tariffs stayed around is because we're already engaged in kind of an awkward trade war thing going on with China, geopolitically with Taiwan, economically, and trade-wise with chip manufacturing and everything. It's easy to levy a tariff. It's hard to take it down. So I'm not going to give Biden the same penalty for maintaining a tariff that Donald Trump laid on somebody, right?
Would accept
and I
to
feel like
mentor you. Destiny streams literally like everything that he does. I don't really need him to mentor me just because I can just watch what he does if I really need to be like mentored by him. If you watch what I do in debates, a lot of it is bad faith Destiny tactics. I noticed this when I edit fucking videos. Okay, I do talk like him sometimes because I have watched it for like 3 fucking years or whatever. Would you let Destiny groom you, Nonfon? Absolutely. Where I'll be like, I always do the just to be clear, blah, 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 like Destiny does, or I'll do the wait, do you acknowledge this? Do you acknowledge this? Do you acknowledge this? And I try to nail them down on it. That's a Destiny tactic too. I notice your bad faith Destiny tactics. Yeah, I mean, I obviously don't think they're bad faith. I wouldn't purposely do a bad faith tactic, but
it's better for bringing manufacturing here for
it's cringe to be honest. Make a real point.
Semiconductor manufacturing.
I always try to make a real point. I don't know what you mean, but give me more than watching. I don't know what he would.
Then even just the tariffs, from
I
don't know. I have Sample. Sample tells me how to be a good debater. Shout out Sample Text. Thank you for making me the master debater.
I totally agree with that. I have another question.
Are you a libertarian?
So
no,
Harris
I'm
has
pretty
proposed
closely aligned with establishment liberals. I would
price
say
controls.
new liberal.
Yeah, I was literally
price controls are on.
Oh my god. Okay, well, watch the price controls thing, and then we're probably not gonna watch the rest of this. A masturbator, exactly. First of all, Trump wants price controls. Trump wants price controls. He said so. He said, I want to cap credit card interest rates at 10%. Okay, he wants price controls. Kamala Harris said it's an anti-price gouging bill, which, by the way, is a law that 34 states already have it. Okay, including fucking Texas. Okay, so clearly this is not that consequential of a fucking bill. Okay, are you kidding me?
Groceries, price controls on rent, lots of different price controls. Historically, that has not played well in other countries. What makes you think, or what makes even the Democrats think, that that's going to work here when it hasn't worked other places?
This is my favorite thing about the Democrats. I don't care what Kamala Harris says about price controls because price controls are one of the most devastating ways that you can annihilate an economy. So I don't think that'll ever go through. I think if Kamala said, we're going to do price controls, there would be 50 million people around here who go, absolutely not. This is insane.
Hey, Trump did propose it. Come on,
Go
Destiny.
out there and apologize and say you're not doing that shit. If Donald Trump says he's going to do 20% tariffs, you have to fall in line or he's going to annihilate your career, right?
True. And you should mention Trump. Oh my God, he should have. I don't know how he doesn't know these two talking points. That one, Trump wants price controls. And two, Harris doesn't really want price controls. She just wants an anti-price gouging bill, which a lot of states already have. So, like,
I think that's the difference. So there are some things, not to revisit it, but like the concept of unrealized capital gains taxes and wealth taxes, for a large number of reasons, these are almost inconceivably difficult to levy. It's how do you evaluate it? It's very, very difficult. I'm not even really concerned about it.
Yes,
I just don't think
Trump wants price controls. Trump said so. Look up. Trump credit card interest cap. He says a temporary cap. We can't let them be 20%, 30%. We're going to cap it at 10%.
And while working Americans catch up, we're going to put a temporary cap on credit card interest rates at 10%. We have no choice. They're getting 22, 25%. We can't let people have to pay 25% and 22% interest because they can't afford to pay off their credit card. We're going to cap it for
This is the price.
period of time at 10%.
This is more of a price control than Kamala Harris's proposal.
We will terminate the Green New Scam and spend the trillions and trillions of dollars of
That's more of a price control than Kamala Harris ever proposed.
An unrealized capital gains tax is ever coming because of how difficult it will be to levy and how much pushback she would get because the Democratic Party is such a white tent party. Look at what happened to Biden when he had a disastrous debate performance. The leftist media.
And Destiny is also right here because, like, yeah, Trump does hate like any resistance to him, whereas I have much more faith that Kamala Harris will, you know, make compromises and work with advisors if they advise her, you know, to do something less economically destructive. Like, yeah, it's unlikely that these bills will even get past the Senate. So, like, yeah, absolutely.
He got bullied internally, and then people.
And tariffs, the president has a unilateral like authority to impose tariffs now. Now it has to be for national security reasons, so I'd expect maybe some of them would get struck down in the court because they're clearly not for national security. And then the second, the central bank independence as well is something entirely within the president's control. Although it might get caught up in courts as well. But
Internally bullied him, externally make him leave.
Well, I mean,
big difference between that and price gouging. Gouging mandates only work in emergencies. You understand the bill Kamala is proposing. It's only in emergency situations, right? It says price gouging only in so that corporations can't take advantage of you during emergencies. That's what Kamala Harris is proposing. That's much less of a price control than Trump saying a temporary 10% cap on credit card interest rates, when the average interest rate on credit cards is more than that.
Say the same thing about Trump's proposal to not tax Social Security. It's frankly because that money actually goes back into the Social Security fund. The income tax on Social Security goes into the Social Security fund, and that would be untenable to pull that money out. So that's an example of, and Congress has to pass that. So I would say, well, a lot of these.
How does that help everyday Americans? What the price gouging bill? It's not going to help everyday Americans because there's not an emergency every day. But
Trump has made. I think some of Trump's tax proposals are not logical.
And quite frankly,
about some of Trump's stuff is that he can do a lot of it by executive action, which is the scary thing.
He can
True.
taxes, tariffs, yes, taxes no.
Taxes probably not, but the tariffs yes, and the tariffs are one of
Taxes
the,
no.
tariffs are one
no.
of the scariest things that he's talking about, though, right?
Tariffs yes. Tariffs yes.
Jesse,
Now,
you're talking
do you think that an executive action like tariffs is, I suspect you do, is particularly worse than just unconstitutionally just wiping out student loan debt?
are you kidding me?
No, I think unconstitutional.
How's it? Tariffs versus student loan debt forgiveness. Are you fucking kidding me?
Wiping out student loan debt would be atrocious.
Which is what Biden attempted several times.
No, I don't
Yeah,
think so. I
he
disagree.
did. He was shut down by the courts.
Sure. So what you just said defeated the argument that you made, right? So the Constitution is what powers the legislature, the courts, and the executive. Biden, his statutory interpretation of the education bill that said that in times the president can forgive certain types of debt or whatever, he attempted the executive, their interpretation.
The price gouging bill is not saying that corporations are. It's not a greedflation bill. So who's winning it all? You mean the election? And I'm assuming you mean the election, not just this debate. So welcome to the stream. Jesus save Justin. I'm hoping Kamala wins. I would give like at least a 60% chance of Kamala winning. The price gouging bill is not like a anti-greedflation bill. The price gouging bill is an anti-price gouging bill in emergency situations. Okay, it's just not true, localists.
Well, I can forgive this debt, and he tried it, and the Supreme Court said, we disagree with that interpretation, you can't, and then he said, oh, okay, I'll look and see what else I can do. I don't think that's violating the Constitution. The executive tried something that they thought that they had the statutory discretion to do, and the court said, no, you don't have it.
You agreed Trump's proposal not to tax Social Security benefits for seniors. In the short term, yes, but in the long term, no, because like he said, like that money goes back into the Social Security fund, right? So it's gonna bankrupt Social Security, but faster, right? So.
I know they're going to shut us down because I know this is not legal. I'm going to do it anyway because maybe I'll get away with it.
I don't know if that's exactly what he said.
Not exactly, but it's basically anyway. I'm just curious. But you're right. You're right. You and I agree on one thing, and that is that anytime we can have balancing powers is a good thing. Okay?
Sure. If I was worried about stuff like that, not to be one for crony, but I'd be way more worried about like Donald Trump trying to remain in office after he lost the election, because that was the thing they were trying to do unconstitutionally. They were advocating for breaking a law, the ECA under Pence, and Eastman himself said that not only can we break this law, there will be no checks and balances because the Supreme Court won't touch this because they'll invoke a political questions doctrine and they won't get involved, so we can just do this. That's arguably above the Constitution or above the court and eliminating checks and balances. So
arguably, so you have it on both sides.
So, no, you don't have it on both sides. That's an unbelievable comparison.
Right.
Well, hold on. That's not on both sides. It's absolutely what they tried to do on the Trump side, unequivocally, and they said as much. I don't believe Biden said, I'm going to go above the Constitution and I'm going to defy the Supreme Court and do all these things. Trump's side did say that.
And Destiny, I don't want
Okay, anyway, I think they're done talking about that, but Invest agrees it's a great idea, reform Social Security to avoid bankrupting it. Yeah, but the not taxing the Social Security, not taxing the Social Security income is a way to bankrupt it faster. So no, I don't think no. Anytime that anyone Trump truly wants to believe after a 4-year term is an absolute moron. Any ideas to reform Social Security? Yeah, remove the I forget what the cap is called, the like income cap on it, where like you don't pay any more after a certain income percentage. I don't know, but that was a interesting debate. Destiny needs to go on Destiny did a fucking Israel-Palestine research arc. When's he gonna do the economics research arc? That's what I'm waiting for. That'll be interesting. If you want to chat with me live, sub here or go to Nonfon420 on Twitch or Kick via the links below. Once again, please like and sub to help with the algorithm, and consider sending a donation through YouTube Super Thanks to directly support me, and I'll make sure to reply to any question you ask. See you guys next time.